For more on this story, I'm joined on set by our international affairs editor, Rochelle Ferguson Bouyahi.
Hi, Karis.
Rochelle, as we saw in that report, there seems to be a real division in how this commemoration is being marked by Spaniards.
Absolutely. Many questions, Karis, as you say, about how exactly Spain is going to mark this 50th anniversary since the death of the dictator Francisco Franco. We saw in that report Spaniards perhaps of a certain age, they're quite nostalgic about Franco's legacy. It's important to say that in the last few months, there's been a real spike amongst young people who are, wanting to bask in his legacy, particularly among disaffected young Spaniards. I can show you here a survey from the state-run pollster, the CIS, that showed that more than 1 in 5, that's 21.3% of Spaniards, have ultimately saw the Franco era as good or very good. That's compared to 11.2% who were asked a similar question. That was back in 2000. Another poll that was done just in July shows that 17.3% of Spaniards aged, again, it's this younger age bracket, 18 to 24, saying that they would ultimately prefer an authoritarian government to a democratic one that's in place now. So a real shift, politically speaking, you might say. Let's just remind our viewers of who General Franco was. Perhaps our younger viewers who, weren't around at the time. He overthrew a democratic republic in a brutal civil war that killed hundreds of thousands of people. He ruled the country with an iron fist between 1939 to 1975, of course, when he died. There were tens of thousands of dissidents executed on Franco's watch. He operated a series of prisons, forced labour camps. No dissidence was allowed. There were absolutely no political parties that were able to run against him, or any trade unions for that matter. And of course, women, to do the most basic administrative tasks, they had to ask either their husbands or their fathers. We're talking about an incredibly repressed society at that time. So it's interesting to see younger generations now wanting to, relive, if you will, or kind of glorify Franco's legacy. Just a point, as that report suggested there, housing is a huge issue, and that's a lot of younger people in Spain are living with their parents until their 30s now because they simply can't afford to either purchase or pay rent prices. There's also the question of immigration. It's estimated now that 20% of the Spanish population is now from outside of Spain. So those are the issues worrying young people, and that could explain the spike in this kind of, Franco legacy and its support for it.
Political polarization is also playing a key part in Franco's legacy, isn't it?
It is indeed. Political polarization. I mean, let's be clear about this. Spain's government says that any commemorations that get underway today are all about the victims, not about the figure that Francisco Franco was, but the victims who were oppressed in that civil war and in that dictatorship. Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez then talking about the legacy of 114,000 people who remain missing to this day. Those disappearances representing the largest in Western Europe. We still don't know what happened to those people, and Pedro Sanchez is saying that we need to remember those. He also introduced, and this is really important, a democratic memory law recently, which means that the Franco regime has been declared officially illegal, and that it's deemed if you defend it publicly, it's deemed a criminal offence. Okay, so those are kind of some of the strategies that Sanchez is putting in place around this legacy. If you look at the other side of the political spectrum, you'll see that Spain's right-wing main opposition group, the Popular Party, they say that Sanchez is not playing the race card, but the Franco card, ultimately. He's playing this card to distract the fact that there are several corruption scandals linked to Sanchez's relatives, and that also, Karis, his minority government is having a real time passing any legislation. So for the far right, this is, just about distraction. I'll just finish up with saying that when it comes to the far right Vox Party, they have been riding for a while now, since 2023, on a wave of anger, if you will. Anger because separatist groups have been given concessions. And again, this question that we're seeing across Europe as populism rises, immigration. So they have seen in the last few months or so, 18.9% of voting intention, I should say, had climbed for the Vox Party. So a real shift, and that shift coming particularly from men.
And could this nostalgia over Franco be down to the fact that Spain hasn't really done enough soul searching about this difficult period in its history?
I think you're right to ask the question, Caris, of introspection. Why? Because Spain, there's a sense that, the legacy of Franco is shrouded in silence, whether it comes to politics, families, schools, which are perhaps not teaching the subject of Franco quite as intensely as they might done of years gone by. If you take other countries that are perhaps the good students in this, South Africa, that got a commission on truth and reconciliation underway in 1996. That was to look at all the horrors of apartheid. Chile did the same as well in the 1990s, having this truth and reconciliation panel as well, giving the country a way to kind of unify how it felt about it, how it's dealt with human rights abuses. There's a sense that Spain has been a little bit late in coming with that, and that could be one explanation as to why this subject of Franco remains so very divisive even 50 years after his death.
All right, Rochelle Ferguson Bouyahi, thank you very much for your analysis on that.